I read a legal thriller, and I told my wife, I said, this book sucks. I could write a better book than this. So I wrote a book, and then I tried to get it published, or I tried to get an agent, and nobody wanted to agent me. I still don't have an agent. I'm a plotter. I write from a very extensive outline, somewhere between 7,000 and 10,000 words. I think you've got to write what you know. I think it becomes really clear if you don't know what you're talking about. So I would say write what you know, don't give up, and listen.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to 10 Hut Media. Today, I'm sitting down with Wall Street Journal best-selling author James Chandler, and trust me, you're in for a great conversation. James has had an incredible journey, from playing baseball in college to serving 20 years in the US Army, and then transitioning into law before finally becoming a best-selling author. We discussed how his military and legal careers shaped his writing, why he decided to tell the stories he does, and what inspires him. So, whether you're a fan of legal thrillers, love a good behind-the-scenes author chat, or enjoy hearing how people take unexpected paths to success, this episode is for you. Let's dive in. Hello, everybody. Welcome back. We are so excited to welcome Wall Street Journal bestselling author James Chandler to our video call. Thank you so much for taking your time to be here, James.
Well, thank you for having me.
And with that, we will jump into our first question, which is kind of like an early life question, if you will. So it's early in the video, so that's what we'll start with. I've heard that you played baseball in college. What position did you play, and do you have any memorable moments from your days of playing?
I didn't play a lot, to be brutally honest with you, but I was an outfielder, left-handed outfielder, mainly center and right field. Lots of memories, I guess. You ask my wife, she would tell you that the older I get, the better I was. But most of what I remember, honestly, is hanging out with the guys and being part of a team, having a lot of fun, doing a little bit of traveling, learning to win, learning to lose, learning to be an adult, kind of the things that you do in college. So lots of good memories there. I didn't come from a very good background, so the guys that I played with that were older were kind of like big brothers and mentors to me, and the guys that were my age were my friends. So I kind of hung around and played for 4 years, lots of good times.
And do you have a baseball team that you follow now, or have you moved away from that?
Well, I do. Unfortunately, I have, in the 20 years I've lived in Wyoming, become a fan of the Colorado Rockies, which can be frustrating at times. But at least I'm not I don't know if there's anything worse than them right now, but they're working on it. So love to go to the Rockies games, love to spend time down there.
Yeah, I'm a Kansas City Royals fan, so I understand your pain. I understand your pain. Not to worry.
Yeah, we used to go to a lot of Royals games when I was at Fort Riley, Kansas. My wife and I would go to watch the Royals a lot.
They're so fun, and the
Yes.
stadium is beautiful. We love it there. That being all said, did you join the Army right out of college?
I did. I joined the Army right after college in 1982. I went to college. Nobody in my family had ever gone to college. I really didn't know what I was doing there. I kind of majored in athletic eligibility. I took whatever the easiest classes there was. And at the end of 4 years, I got a degree in general studies. There wasn't a lot of call for people with that kind of a degree. And in 1982, you weren't even born yet, I'm sure, but there weren't a lot of jobs out there. There was a high unemployment rate. And I had been a military brat until the time I was about 12, and nobody was hiring, and the Army was. So I enlisted in the Army initially, and then I went to officer candidate school, got my commission. I fell in love with the Army because it's sort of like playing football or baseball. It's a team sport, so to speak.
How did college athletics compare to military training? Was there kind of a similarity? I mean, I'm sure there's major differences, but...
I think there is a similarity. I mean, obviously the military is a lot more serious, but you're working together with men and women to try to accomplish a goal. And the goal, other than winning games, is to close with and defeat the enemy. You're wearing the same uniform. You've got the same purpose. It's physical in nature in terms of training. It requires, some degree of intelligence to make sure that you understand what's going on. And it requires sacrifice on your behalf. So, I found it similar and really enjoyed it.
And then what was your specialty in the Army? And if you could translate it into civilian terms, maybe.
To begin with, I was an air defense artillery officer, so anti-aircraft. Our mission in that branch is to locate and defeat aircraft and missiles. And it's probably broadened by now. I've been retired for 20 years and haven't always kept up with what they did. That was my initial specialty. I spent most of my time in support of infantry and armor maneuver forces. So I had time in the 1st Infantry Division, the 10th Mountain Division, the 6th Infantry Division. That was sort of my deal. But in the Army, if you are a combat arms officer at about the halfway point, they ask you to take on a secondary function. And mine was public affairs, public relations, if you will. So I was sent to Marshall University. I got a master's degree in journalism. And then I did some time as a public affairs officer in Alaska for the U.S. Army Alaska and Army Pacific. And then I finished my career in the Pentagon as a strategic communications planner and spokesman for the Office of the Secretary of Defense.
That all sounds incredible. I mean, it's such a wide range of different things that I'm sure when you got to the last one, you kind of really understood what was happening in so many places. You also mentioned in there, I think, 2 different locations, plus I think you mentioned earlier being in Kansas. You were stationed in Alaska and then also worked in the Pentagon. Do you have a favorite location during your time in the military?
I was at Fort Wainwright for a couple of years in the mid-90s. I liked it 3 months a year. It was fabulous with the fishing and hunting you could do. But, the 50 below would wear you out in the wintertime, the darkness. But there was a ski hill on post. I mean, there was a lot of fun there. I don't know. I might say Fort Drum. The 10th Mountain Division is a hell of an outfit. I was there from 95 to 98. We had our second child there. It's an unknown fishing hotspot and just a wonderful outfit to spend some time with. Really enjoyed it.
And then kind of moving out away from the military and kind of after when you retired, you went into law. And not only law, I mean, you've been doing, everything. So what motivated you to pursue the law after so many years in the military?
Well, my specialty, air defense artillery, was such that when I retired, I was only going to be able to stay as sort of a military contractor or do something like that in a few places because it's a pretty limited career field. I had a daughter. My wife and I were married a long time before we had children. And so I retired rather than have her attend 3 high schools. That's the way it was looking. She was and is brilliant. She's a surgeon now. Oh. And so I was very concerned about getting her somewhere and getting her feet set to take advantage of that. And so I was looking around, honestly, about what can I do that gives me the opportunity to go anywhere, especially head west. And so I thought about the law. And I had a professor 20 years previously to that one time had suggested to me when I was an undergrad that, maybe I had to think about going to law school. So at the time, I didn't give it serious thought. Again, nobody in my family had ever had gone to law school. And I was struggling to get through as an undergrad, So didn't think about it. But I thought about it when I was in Washington again. And there were night programs available. So I actually began while I was on active duty and then finished up when I was working as a defense contractor. And so it was really not a lot more to it than that. I didn't do real well, but I got through it and got my degree.
Well, and then since then, and not everyone is aware of this, but you have served as a judge for a number of years. And so with that, you've also done a lot of work to try to improve our justice system. Can you talk a bit about how your views have changed since you served on the court?
As an Army officer, I was in a bit of a sheltered world, I've subsequently discovered. And even though I came out of a real bad family background, as an Army officer and then as a civil litigator, I represented primarily business interests in state and federal courts, businesses suing businesses. I think before I became a judge, I had the thought, and a lot of people do, that people who have been charged with crimes are bad people or criminals, that people who aren't paying their bills are, or getting kicked out of their apartments need to, get off their butt and pay their bill or pay their rent or whatever. So I became a judge after 12 years as an attorney. And what I found almost immediately that is true to a degree. There are people who are evil. There are people who are deadbeats. But a lot of the people who are in the criminal justice system especially, but in the civil system as well, are people who, but for alcohol and drugs, wouldn't find themselves in the position that they're in. So I was sort of surprised to find that, and to the degree that it influences everything we do. I'm a lower court trial judge, so I see all criminal defendants, but I pass felons on down the hall after setting bond and doing a preliminary hearing to make sure there's enough evidence for them to be bound over. But I deal daily with people who have been charged with crimes up to 1 year, driving under the influence, domestic violence, things like that. I also do orders of protection, stockade, domestic violence orders of protection, civil up to 50,000, evictions. So just so many of those situations are the result of people who are struggling with drugs and alcohol and mental illness. So there was in our community a drug court, a so-called drug court, to deal with people who, but for their drug problems, wouldn't be involved in the criminal justice system. And I had been involved with that before I was appointed to the bench in 2017, to some degree. But when you're on the bench and dealing with it every day, the need becomes readily apparent. So I helped expand that from a felony treatment court, from a drug court to a felony treatment court, so we could focus on people with chronic alcohol issues. And then we stood up a misdemeanor treatment court for people who have been convicted of misdemeanors. And recently, with a lot of assistance from a lot of people around the state of Wyoming, we stood up Wyoming's first mental health diversion court. So when we get people in who don't belong in jail, but are violating the law, we look to provide them with resources so that hopefully we can avoid what I call the revolving door of justice, because I don't want sick people. I don't want people who are suffering from mental illness sitting in jail. And neither does the sheriff, and neither does the county attorney, and neither do the defense attorneys. So it's one of those things that has just turned out to be a great thing to do, just like our treatment courts. We know with these kinds of problems, you got three options. You can ignore it and live with them, or you can jail them, or you can treat them. Sometimes everything comes together. I'm not in the right and wrong business. I'm not in the good or bad business. I'm not in the fiscal responsibility business. That's other people's job. But I'm in the lawful and unlawful business. And sometimes they all line up. And we think treatment courts line up so that they're fiscally responsible. They're the right thing to do. They're a good thing to do. And they're a lawful thing to do. And I'm just a huge proponent of them.
That is just so incredible, truthfully. That is, I think, so important to today, especially. Is this type of work happening in other states, or is this something that you've started in Wyoming?
Oh, no. The treatment courts, I would say, are about a 21st century development across the United States. And, Wyoming was in early. My community, Campbell County up in the northeast corner, Gillette, was in on this early. I've been chairing our board of directors since even before I became a judge in 2010. It plays a role. Like anything else, it plays a role. I mean, you still have people that the best place for them is somewhere where they can't hurt people, and they don't pose a danger to the community. But there are others who, if we can put up boundaries and put up limits, they can function. We also started a program that we got the idea from South Dakota called a 24/7 program. So with that program, the idea initially was to have people who are struggling with alcohol to show up twice a day and take a portable breath test to try to give them some accountability and dissuade them from the use of alcohol. And then we expanded that to using drug sensing patches to put on people's arms so that, again, accountability and try to dissuade them from using. We expanded it yet again so that we have mouse swabs that they can come in and run them like a popsicle through your mouth. It'll give you an instant measure and find out if these folks are using. And the idea here is I don't want them sitting in jail playing pinochle and eating taxpayer-funded chow. I want them out buying their own kids' school books and, cranking out 8 a day and doing that. So this helps facilitate that. We're just now, the sheriff just told me the other day, he's now putting a kiosk up in the lobby of the detention center so people can just come in and take these breath tests for the presence of alcohol, which will allow us to expand the availability because there's a lot of shift work that goes on in my part of the country. People, cowboys, coal miners, oil and gas folks. So a lot of them are working 12, 14-hour days, and this will expand the availability of the program to them. So we're doing what we can to keep people out of jail and with their families.
So on top of all of the incredible work that you have done thus far, you are also, as we said before, a best-selling Wall Street Journal author. With all of those things that you have done, how did you get started into writing fiction?
I don't know that I really had a plan to write fiction, but I remember maybe 10 or 12 years ago, I read a legal thriller, and I told my wife, I said, this book sucks. I could write a better book than this. And we'd been married about 30 years at the time. And like most wives, she said, yeah, sure you could. So I think it was a little bit of a challenge. And I hunted and pecked around for a couple of years. And then I finally had some time, I guess. My daughters had graduated from high school and were on doing their thing. So we had a little more time. And so I started writing a book. So I wrote a book, and then I tried to get it published, or I tried to get an agent, and nobody wanted to agent me. I still don't have an agent. Then I decided to go direct to see if I could go direct to the publishers, and no luck there. And I had given up. I ran into a judge at a judicial conference who has become a mentor of mine named Martin Clark. He's a New York Times best-selling author and a judge. And he goes, every group of judges I talk to, there's a guy with a book. If you're the guy with the book, come see me. I told him about the struggles I'd had, and he basically said, keep going, keep trying. So I came back, and that was in September of 2019. And I told my wife, I said, I'll give it till the first of the year. And I think December 12th, Mo Metland from Silver River Publishing said, hey, Andrew Watts wants to talk to you. So, and then we just kind of got going. So kind of an accident, I guess, kind of a bet, kind of a dare. I don't know.
Listen, and we love it. We're glad that you kept going. We are.
No, thank you.
So you've been writing, obviously, and all writers have their kind of routine when they're writing, or they try to at least. So can you walk us through a typical day of your writing life? Like, how do you balance writing with your professional and your personal responsibilities?
I'm at my best early in the morning. So what I do is, first of all, I'm a plotter. I write from a very extensive outline, somewhere between 7,000 and 10,000 words. So what that allows me to do is to write a different part of the book. I don't have to write chronologically. So if I'm feeling confrontational, maybe I can write a court scene that needs that. Or if I'm feeling, sad or whatever, I can adopt what I feel like writing to the scene and still have it kind of in order. So that allows me to write in small batches. I get up usually about 5. I'm in the office by 5:30, 6 o'clock. And I try to write for an hour every morning. Sometimes I have time to write at lunch. I take a laptop with me to my chambers and keep it on my desk. But the majority of my writing is done one day each weekend is big for me. And then because I work for the state of Wyoming, I don't work federal holidays and state holidays. And my wife is a professional in her own right, and she does. So I make a lot of money on weekends. And then on federal and state holidays. Mm-hmm. So that's how I do it, just a bite at a time. I try to write a section at a time.
It's all about the steps that occur, one step at a time.
Yeah, I try to keep it all separate.
With all of these, you have a brand new book coming out in just a couple weeks here, February 18th, I believe,
Hey,
called Justice Bites, with co-authored with a seasoned attorney, Laura Snider. How did this collaboration come about? I mean, like, what unique perspectives did Laura bring to the writing process, and what did you bring? How did you all work together?
she's fabulous. I don't know exactly how it came out. How it came out from my end was Andrew, the publisher, asked me, "Are you interested in doing a collaborative writing?" And to be brutally honest with you, I was not to start with, because one of the things that I disliked most about being in the Pentagon was collaborative writing. I had this idea it wouldn't work. He said, "Well, why don't you talk to author Laura Snider?" And I had read one of her books before, and I really enjoyed it. So I thought, well, it doesn't hurt to talk with her. So we spoke, and we agreed on a number of things. We weren't going to have any graphic violence, no explicit sex, no real bad language, no politics. And beyond that, I said, well, let's do it. She brings, I would say, the heavy lifting to the projects, because it's kind of funny not knowing this going in, but her favorite part of writing is to write that first draft. She's a pantser, as they call them in the business. She doesn't write from an outline. She just writes wherever the characters take her. That blows my mind that anybody could write that way, but she does a great job doing it. So she writes the first draft. I take it from there. So I think the way we collaborate is almost like she's the creative force. And if you envisioned it as a house, she's digging the basement, laying the concrete, framing it out, maybe put the roof on. And then I come through and sort of do the siding, install the windows, and then do the finish work, which is the part of writing I like best. I like taking a sentence that maybe isn't everything that it could be, or a paragraph that it could be, and try to craft that into a better piece of writing. And not that I have to do that a lot with what she presents, but I'm having fun with it.
Yeah, it seems like a partnership that worked out incredibly well, with both of your skills.
Much better than some people that I've spoken with that have had a similar experience. It's been fun, and she thinks of stuff and writes stuff that would never enter my mind.
So, I mean, given yours and Laura Snider's experience in the legal field, in writing a legal thriller, how important was the legal accuracy in Justice Bites? And how did you both ensure that throughout the novel?
Well, it's really important to both of us. Again, that was one of the upfront points that we agreed on, that if we did, that this was going to be a legal thriller, but that it would be authentic and it would be realistic, because for my taste, there's too many legal thrillers out there that are written by people who clearly are not attorneys, or clearly are not courtroom attorneys. Laura's a courtroom attorney. She's been a prosecutor. She's been a defense attorney. And she still is. She still represents clients, or represents, I think, and she's on the prosecution side right now. But she's still in the courtroom every day. And I'm in the courtroom every day. So I think that Justice Bites and the follow-on novel, Bodies of Proof, it should be evident to anybody reading them that has any experience with the criminal justice system in Iowa, because these are based in Iowa. We align procedurally with Iowa, and she brings that knowledge and realism to it. But it should be evident to any reader that, hey, these are people that know what they're talking about in courts.
Yeah, you would hope so, that a legal thriller will be written by two people who understand the legal system inside and out. Kind of stepping away from Justice Bites and talking to these new authors, these people who are also wanting to write their book and also become Wall Street Journal bestselling authors, what strategies or steps would you recommend to new authors aiming to get published?
Well, I think the first thing that I would tell people, reflecting back, is, first of all, I think you've got to write what you know. I think it becomes really clear if you don't know what you're talking about. And again, going back to a legal thriller that I had read, it was implausible from a legal standpoint. The language wasn't right. It was just clear that this person was not an attorney and/or didn't spend any time in a courtroom. So I would say, write what you know, write what you know. And the other thing is, look, this is a business that's all about rejection. like I said, I still don't have an agent. And so I probably had 75 rejections there and that many with publishing. And if you're being rejected all the time, if you're just writing a story to get published, or you're writing what you think people want, I think it's easy to get discouraged.
Mm-hmm.
It's easy to get discouraged anyway. But if you believe in the project and if you believe in what you're writing about, then I think it's easier to hang in there. And that would be my second thing, which is hang in there, don't give up. The third thing I would say is you need to listen. But there were times early on that Andrew would make suggestions to me about certain things. And maybe I didn't necessarily agree or want to do that. There were very few in my case. But he made clear to me there were authors who didn't and were difficult to work with. Well, I didn't want to be that guy, number one. Number two, this is what he does. I mean, if your copy editor, my copy editor, if she suggests we make a change, I make the change. My proofreaders, if that's what they think, I make a change. The advanced readers, if that's what they think, I make the change. This is what they do. This is what they get paid to do. So I may be the author, but again, that doesn't mean I know everything. And I try not to take, and I don't take so much pride, I guess, in the product that I'm unwilling to listen or be receptive to advice. So I would say, write what you know, don't give up, and listen. You need to listen to the people that get paid to do what they're doing to help you.
Agree with all of those three things. So important. You mentioned kind of getting criticism, hearing the no, hearing the rejection. And with that, after being published also comes negative reviews. So how do you handle that feedback or that criticism? And what role has it played in your development as a writer? Do you consider the reviews? Do you ignore the reviews?
I ignore them. And I'll tell you why. Now, let me say this. I ignore them individually. I look at the early reviews of the book. I don't read the words, but I look at the early reviews of the book on Amazon and Goodreads. Mm-hmm. I heard C.J. Box, who's a Wyoming author, talk one time when I first got published, and he said, when you get to about 100 reviews on a book, that's probably where it's going to be. And so I want to see 4+ stars on every book, because that tells me, that it's kind of like where everybody else's is. It might be 4.4, 4.5, whatever. But I want to see some color in that 5th star. But I don't rate the individual reviews. It has to do with me. Okay. I'm one of those people that for a variety of reasons, I can focus on the negative to the exclusion of the positive. That's all I would worry about. I'm the guy that if I have 8 5-star reviews and 2 1 stars, I'd be focused on the 1 stars. And there's no reason to do that. So I do look at the aggregate where it's at and hope that each book is coming out, because that tells me as a group, the vast majority of readers are satisfied, and there'll be some outliers either way. I don't read anybody else's writing other than Laura Snider's either, because 1, I don't want to be intimidated. And 2, I don't want to be accused of plagiarism or stealing somebody's idea. So I try to keep myself in a box, and I try to write the book that I want to write and not adjust to what I think the audience wants to read or maybe the editor wants to read. And they obviously give me tremendous freedom at this point.
Incredible. So box,
I hide. The short answer is I hide.
Well, the box seems to be working. The box seems to be working so well. We're on our last question. Time has flew by. And I've tweaked the question just a little bit because I'm so curious to know if you had to take one thing from your years as a writer away from you, if you had to take one thing with you after your years of being a writer, what would you take with you?
Oh, wow. That's a deep question.
Sorry.
I think I would say stay at it until it's right. There's a tendency to say good enough. And then maybe more than that is if you get in the position where you can do so, surround yourself with people who are smarter than you are. Mm-hmm. I have had the opportunity to do some stuff with some other places now. And I've stayed where I am because I'm satisfied that these people are smarter than I am and they know what's good for me. My copy editor, I don't know that she's in the copy editing business anymore. but she works. So I called her. I said, man, you know what? I'm not comfortable having anybody other than you look at my stuff. Would you make an exception for me? And so far she has, and I'm sure she'll move on in her career. There'll be a point where she won't. But so I'd say surround yourself with people that you trust and that are smarter than you are, and don't be satisfied with it until it's right.
Thank you so much, James, again for joining us this evening, afternoon, morning, wherever you might be. We have so appreciate having a chat with you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate being here and always happy to talk about writing.